All right. If you've been watching videos on YouTube about aquariums, you have no doubt heard the word quarantine. Some of you hear that word and you're like, well, yeah, you have to do it. You don't know what your new fish are bringing into the tank. While the rest of you will be like,
oh, Lord Jesus, ain't nobody got time for that.
Well, who's right and who's wrong? If you don't quarantine your fish, are you setting yourself up for an aquarium nightmare? Well, let's find out. Okay, let me get this out of the way because some of you are like, what's quarantining? Well, it's simple. If you have an aquarium full of fish and you want to buy some new fish to add to the tank, you're risking the new fish having some kind of disease, and once they're added, it'll spread to all the other fish. A good thing, adding new fish to your aquarium, turns into a bad thing because all of your fish end up getting sick and dying. Okay, yeah, that's an extreme example, but it does happen. Quarantining new fish would be putting them in a tank of their own and monitoring them for a length of time to make sure they're okay before putting them in with your existing fish. Obviously, this means you're going to need another tank that's set up and running to put these fish in. It's not like you can just leave them in the bag that they came in from the store. Not if you want them to live. Quarantine tanks don't need to be anything special. Just a glass box or even a tote with a filter and a heater if your fish needs that, and that's it. You don't need any fancy decorations or substrates. This is a quarantine tank, not a fancy display tank. Some of you might already be like, okay, well, listen, I live in an apartment and I only have room for one aquarium, so I'm out. Well, listen, this is a temporary setup that can go anywhere, and once you're done quarantining, you can just put it away. But wait, John, doesn't an aquarium need to be cycled? If you put it away, it won't be cycled. Why are you always yelling at me? Listen, take a sponge filter and run it in the back of your existing aquarium. Just stick it behind some rocks or something out of sight. When you want to set up your quarantine tank, pull the sponge out, put it in the new tank along with a heater and some Fritzheim 7, and you're good to go. So now that we know what a quarantine is, the question is, should you do it? Is it really necessary, or is it just one of those things that the elites in the hobby say you should do, and if you don't, you're a bad fish keeper? Well, I'm definitely not an elitist that would ridicule you if you don't do everything I say, so you're probably thinking I'm just going to say, nah, just throw your new fish in there and roll the dice. And you'd be wrong. I definitely think quarantining is important, but I also know it's not necessary 100% of the time. Let me give you an example. If I buy fish from a big box store that has recirculating systems, meaning all the tanks share the same water, I'm going to want to quarantine them. But if I buy from a reputable dealer that I have a relationship with and have bought dozens of fish from, I'm not going to do it. If I'm buying fish from a fish swap and have no clue where the fish came from or what they were in before I bought them, I'm going to quarantine those. But if I bought from a friend who I know and have a good understanding of how they take care of their tanks, I probably won't. Again, it all depends on the circumstances. Now, in a perfect world, everyone would have an extra tank running at all times that they can use to quarantine new fish whenever they get them, but let's be honest, not many people are going to do that. Plus, how many fish nerds have you visited that have a tank over there with nothing in it? Come on, let's be real. We're fish keepers. If there's an empty tank, that's an opportunity to buy more fish. I guess if we're talking about a perfect world, there wouldn't need to be any quarantining because there would be no such thing as sick fish. Anyway, like I said, if you're familiar with where the fish came from and how they've been kept, I wouldn't blame you if you didn't quarantine. I've done it hundreds of times. There's something that's happened more times than I can count on my channel that really bothers me, and I just can't be quiet about it anymore. I can think off the top of my head of at least 6 videos that Lisa and I have done where we've gotten brand new fish and put them into tanks by themselves. Like this one, and this one, and this one. Let's use this tank as an example. I got this tank from Custom Aquariums. I took it out of the crate, I set it all up, and it was all brand new. I did all of this on video. Then I got these 60 gorgeous yellow labs from my friends over at Florida Exotic Fish Sales, and I put them into the tank by themselves. They're the only fish in it, and they're the only fish that have ever been in it. But I still had dorks comment, "Did you quarantine those fish before you put them in there?" This is an example of someone who's not so smart, thinking they had something on me and blurting it out of their stupid head before they even had a second to think about it. If they had thought about it for just 1 second, they would have realized they are in a quarantine tank. The definition of quarantine is a strict isolation imposed to prevent the spread of disease. And they're in the tank by themselves. Who could they possibly spread disease to? Deep breath, John. Just calm down. All right, to get back on topic, is quarantining new fish important? Of course it is. Should you do it? Yes. But if you're unable to because you don't have a tank you can quarantine them in, or you're buying them from somebody you can trust, you can get away with not doing it. You just have to understand that you're taking a risk. There's always the threat that your new fish could have a disease, a parasite, or really any illness that could spread to your other fish in the tank. Is this something that happens every time? Of course not, but the threat's always there. Like we talked about last week, there is risk in almost everything we do, so you just have to accept that. Now, having said that, I will tell you that the threat is real. Did anyone else just get the Chevelle song stuck in their head? You're welcome. Lisa and I are guilty of not quarantining and losing an entire tank of fish. And it was all from some stupid Cory cats that we bought from Petco. Believe me, this was a while ago. We're still beating ourselves up over it. It sucks when it happens, believe me, but it is rare. Well, depending on where you're buying your fish from, I guess. But if you have the means to set up an extra tank, or you just have one sitting around that you can use as a quarantine tank to remove that threat, it's always better to be on the side of caution.
If you have the means, I highly recommend picking one up. Thank you. Yes, sir. Mint.
I totally understand that not everyone can do it, and I won't yell at you if you don't. Not like those people we talked about earlier. Before we go, I feel like I might have been a little hard on those people we talked about earlier that commented on previous videos, and I feel like maybe I should apologize. But I won't. I meant every single word I said. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.